Re perile bakokwane. Greetings from Musoni. Ntukulu wabangoni ni bandao. Today I want to talk about a very, very important topic, ancestral veneration. So if you are a new born again into Afrikan spirituality, having found new knowledge that your former Christian faith has its roots in Afrikan spiritual systems, this is going to be very important for you before you make any moves out there. This week on my Facebook Messenger, I received a message from this individual. Hello, the ancestors connected me to you, that they tried to reach you through your dreams, but you never received them, and some were blocked by the people who are doing a lot of witchcraft at you. That's why you face blah, blah, blah. The first thing I thought about this message is how vague it is. It uses the term ancestors in a very general term, which for a person such as myself who has walked this journey of knowledge of self, I have come to understand that in the African context, the word ancestors does not mean anything, because there are categories of ancestors. And that is what we are going to discuss today. And before I go on in discussing that, I think the person would have done probably a better job if they had mentioned who these ancestors are, because in my bloodline, I have millions and millions of ancestors. So at least if you can name the people. I mean, I come from a place where you could be walking down the streets of Johannesburg and someone tells you specifics about your life, which is impossible to guess or to be common amongst people, because sometimes people use the human vanity of thinking you're unique, so they throw common things at you and you think, wow, when in actual fact most things that are true about you are true about a lot of people. So what is Afrikan spirituality? What is ancestral veneration? Because a lot of people they come out from a Christian world and they have no idea what this ancestral veneration is all about. And people argue whether we worship ancestors or whatnot and whatnot. The first important part is the degree of separation. In Afrikan spirituality, we've got levels. We have the highest level, which is the divine. We have the medium level, the humane, and we have the lowest level, the demonic. So when a human being in Afrikan spirituality, when someone says they practice Afrikan spirituality, they need to be specific. Are they practicing the divine? Are they operating in the humane? Or are they operating in the demonic? A majority of people operate in the humane, and all the religions of the world today operate in the humane. Why do I say this? Because a lot of the principles that are taught in the church, they tell you if you do 1, 2, 3, you'll achieve 1, 2, 3. And Christians then, honest Christians, will ask themselves, but that guy is not a believer and he's achieving the same stuff. And then the preacher will then answer and say, well, if you apply the principles, it will work for you. So everything of high power that Christians associate with their faith is experienced by other people of other religions and non-religious people. And that is because those principles operate in the humane level of spiritual power. Things like manifesting and laws of attraction and things like that. Those are all in the humane. Now, the first part that I want to discuss is what we call the divine. And the first text that we're going to reference from is the Afrikan Cosmology of the Bantu Congo, Principles of Life and Living by Dr. Fukiao. The first part that we need to understand is that in Afrikan cosmology, this can be found in throughout the continent of Africa, is that the life of a human being takes the path of the sun from where you are born at Kala, then you mature Kula to Tukula, and then you go into sunset. This is the latter parts of your life. Hence, in isiZulu, when a person reaches the sunset, the Luvemba, when you then pass away, it is said ushonile, ukoko ushonile, and which is the same word for, it means sunset. Ugushona, when they say sunset, they say ilanga lishonile in isiZulu. So you can see the same philosophy even in isiZulu. So having understood the positions one takes in their path, when you reach this path here, to kula, to grow, to mature kula, is to be ready to enter into this powerful zone of the V of life. It is very important to understand also that the V of life zone is to stand vertically. The lama limba nganga. Inside the V of life, V kiazu zingu, to stand vertically like a master nganga, between the earth and the sky, bakwati kwantoto yezulu, and between the upper and the lower world. The Egyptian Ankh itself is nothing else but a symbol of a master standing vertically inside the V of his community life as a priest and a leader. The fate of societies, institutions, and social systems are all depend on how people of a given system, or society rather, enter this zone. So when you see the chaos within the black community today, is because the kula part is not happening. There is no growing and maturing. So all the issues that black people are facing all around the world, African people are facing all around the world, are centered on the abandoning of our culture. A man who grows up at the Tukula, the V of life, is in the process of making history. He enters the rank of ancestors, those well-minded people who grew up before him. On the contrary, so when you kula, you grow, you become a master and nganga, you enter the rank of these type of ancestors. On the contrary, a man that does not grow up, the one who deviates, is not well-minded, is not in the process of making history. He enters the rank of the Nkuyu, the bad ancestors, while living the deviators, the regressive and stunted ancestors. These ancestors are those individuals who were not able to telema limba nganga, to become masters, to live inside their most aspired V of life zone, the V3. They pass this zone of power, creativity, inventions, and mastery in all aspects of life in a state of blindness. They were asleep, stunted ancestors, bakulu bakuya. So we comprehend and understand that the status or what type of ancestor a person becomes is largely dependent on the life they lead. And death on its own is not a qualifier for one to become an ancestor, to be venerated. And in the ancient Egyptian language, the word for God is Neteru. And we see also from this text, from the analysis of the word, that the word also includes deified human beings. And an example of a deified human being in ancient Egypt is right here, Queen Nefertari of the 20th dynasty. She is depicted with a black color, because in ancient times black was the color of divinity. And by the way, this same concept of the Neteru being used for the word God and the word for ancestors or deified human beings, because as I showed, the human beings were deified after they had transcended, or they had passed on into death, or through death. So, as we can see with Queen Nefertari, we see the same concept in the Basotho language of Southern Africa. The word for God in Sesotho is Modimo, and the word for gods is Badimo, and the word for ancestors is Badimo. So you can see the same word for God and the same word for ancestors is used. That is because it is talking about what you would call the Abiu in ancient Kemet, who are the divine ancestors. And Brother Saim Hotep, in his presentation, one of his video presentations, he breaking down the linguistics, he shows the cognate of the word Iwin, which is a god in ancient Kemet. It's a cognate with the Yoruba word for which is Iwin, for ancestors. And in the Ngas language, it's one, ancestors, the living, dead, shades. And in is it Bachama, it's one, the demigod in charge of the dead, and the demigod in charge of the kingdom of death. Also in isiZulu, the word Idlozi, which today most people, the lay person on the street, uses that word to refer to any person that has passed on. But the word Idlozi is a designation that is reserved for specific type of people who are a divine ancestor. It's not just anybody that passed on who becomes Idlozi. So the whole concept of grouping ancestors into one category, or everybody who was passed on into one category as an ancestor, is due to the loss of our culture and the standard having been dropped. And it all started with the removal of the divine from our African spiritual systems, because that aspect is no longer found in a majority of our African practices. The divine is that power that human beings used to tap in, which makes even scientists marvel today about the doggone how they know about the star Sirius B, which they have a Sigi ritual around, and also how Inzalo Yolanga was built. They claim it was built by aliens, or the Great Pyramids. So we can see quite a lot of the power that our ancestors had tapped into during the days when the divine was still in power, and the divine was dethroned when we forsook Ubuntu, and when the missionaries came, the leopard, which is the divine, which is the one that anoints the king. This is the Mboni. As I explained in this video, Masonic secrets behind African kingships, why modern African monarchs are anointed by the church, which has replaced the Mboni, and who is the leopard and the ancient priesthood that is no longer with us today. So to get a better breakdown of that, you can check out the video on my YouTube channel. And because the divine is no longer with us, a lot of what we call African spirituality in terms of the practice in the modern society that has been exposed to the Abrahamic religions, by default, most of it operates in the demonic. This is why a lot of them, as I showed in the message earlier, a lot of them, their main focus is witchcraft. So if you go and see a sangoma or a medium of some sort, or when they approach you, the discussion is always witchcraft or something is going wrong. That is because they are operating no longer in the divine. And so they tend to fall into the vibration or the level of the demonic. If today we look at the black community, young people no longer have role models within the black community. There's a lot of idolization of thugs and prostitutes, and we can see the reason why this politics are such a big thing within the black community, because people mainly look up to politicians who are who are well known for doing one thing and one thing only, which is to deceive the people and stealing resources. And South Africans, we have seen with this character of Thabo Bester how a lot of black people idolize this young character, this criminal character called Thabo Bester. The males they idolize him. They say he's intelligent, and if you look at the females, they idolize this Dr. Nandipa character. So the reason for that is because we no longer have people within our community who stand in the position of the V, the tukula. We no longer have systems that initiated people into this to become the ngangas, the masters in every aspect of their lives, and therefore the fate of our societies being dependent on how a people of a given society enter the zone. We can see why there's a lot of chaos within the black community and the idolization of criminal life. And this leads to a society producing bad ancestors. So when you have a lot of people that fail to go into the V of life, so when they pass on, they become bad ancestors. In this text, the Lugbara religion, we are going to see how witchcraft is fundamentally defined as not just what a lot of people think, it's magic. According to the Lugbara of the Uganda, witchcraft is not some magic power that one has to destroy people, but a witch is called Oleu. The other term is Ba Olo Oleberi, which translates a man with ole, which is indignation, jealousy. The typical situation in which a man feels ole, which is indignation, is said to be when he passes a homestead and sees the occupant sitting eating with good millet in its flat basket with pots of rich and succulent meats and relishes, and he is not called in to share the meal. And Dr. Fukiao shows us that people that fail to become masters in their lives become bad ancestors. This is directly linked to them becoming jealous and operating in the spirit of witchcraft, because they feel like failures in their lives. So the question is, when someone says the ancestors are calling you, the question is, which ancestors? Is it Bakulu Bakuya, who are the bad ancestors? And in a generation that has very little regard for elders' wisdom, I find it a contradiction that especially in South Africa, where I'm from. There is a huge trend of people becoming sangomas, saying they have ancestral calling. In this text, the Grand Master, Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa, brings out a very, very powerful principle. He says when a child has questions about life itself, the mysteries of life, they must first go to their parents. They don't go to their grandmother and their grandfather. First, they go to the parents and ask all the questions, and when the parents have been exhausted and cannot answer the questions any further, only then can they go to the grandparents. And after they've exhausted the grandparents with all the questioning and they still have questions, only then can they go to the carriers of the wisdom traditions of that community or that society. Even the great Ogotomeli of the Dogon people was initiated by his grandfather into the mysteries systems or the mastery systems of the cosmology of the Dogon people. And so what I find contradictory with the situation, especially in South Africa, with the trend of young people becoming sangomas, even when I travel outside the country, people say that almost everybody in South Africa is becoming a sangoma. And that trend has been questioned by everybody. People have questions why all of a sudden, in more than the previous times, we have more sangomas than ever before. And there have been discussions about this trend, even as this tweet says, everyone can be a sangoma nowadays. Europeans, gays, lesbians, feminists, broke celebrities, slave queens, etc. I really don't know what's going on with today's sangomas. It's like being a sangoma is no more a spiritual realm. It has become a trend. Togoza Koko. For those that do not know what a sangoma is, it is a person who has been initiated as a, well, can't really have an accurate English term for it, but the words for healer. The term that has been used during colonial times has been witch doctor. With that being said, the topic of this discussion is Afrikan spirituality, ancestors versus demons. So the great question is Afrikan spirituality divine, or is it witchcraft? Obviously, Abrahamic traditions have come out and vilified Afrikan spirituality as demonic. And in the rise of reintroducing African traditions to African peoples for us to embrace them, the opposite has been that our culture is not demonic. And I agree, yes, our culture is not demonic. But most of the things that people practice today that they call culture is not our culture. The initiation systems that are being that are happening are not cultural. If one is to really find pure culture in Africa, you really have to go and see the people that are in remote areas out there, like the Kung people of I think they're in the Kalahari Desert. You go to the Dogon people, all the groups that have isolated themselves to prevent or to protect themselves from the contamination of Western culture and Abrahamic traditions. Only those people have managed to preserve what we call culture in its purest forms. Amongst the people who have been exposed to Western culture, it is very minimal, probably underground if anybody is practicing pure African culture. Because I can tell you, even many of these so-called sangomas, they are Christians. You know, they are Christians. They pray to Jesus. They use the Bible, and so it's a mixture of stuff. It's that's what you call bastardization. It's a hybrid. It is not in its purest forms. That is because the divine has been removed. So they try and use Christianity to fill in the gap of the divine. And all of it is operating in the demonic. And here's what will shock a lot of people. The humane is superior to the demonic. That's why I put it in those levels. And as I explained earlier in the video, the Abrahamic traditions fall within the humane and not in the divine, because every principle that you find being taught in the Abrahamic traditions can be attained to by an atheist or a person from a completely different religious structure, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, that is not aligned to Abrahamic traditions. And obviously then your theologians will explain that God is a respecter of principles and not of the person. And the actual truth is that it is all those principles operate in the humane, and any human being can attain to them. You don't have to subscribe to any form of system or initiation or whatsoever. And some people even stumble into them by just being the best versions of themselves. So in conclusion, the two principles that I've put out is that there are ancestors in the light who lived a life of high culture. They operated in the V of life. They became masters in Ganga. And then there are those who are deviators, who did not live their best life, and those become bad ancestors, or Bakulu Bakuya in the Congo language. So the question is, when you say you have ancestral calling, you can basically get a calling from any of these two groups, because essentially spirits are always looking for a body to be able to manifest their presence on earth. So even Bakulu Bakuya, the bad ancestors, are also looking for someone to call for them to manifest themselves through, just as the great ancestors are looking for a good vessel to manifest their power on earth. And so when you listen to some random stranger who says your ancestors have connected with them, it should bring you questions about how did those ancestors get to skip your parents and your grandparents, as I showed Sanu, the two great initiates, such as the Grandmaster Vusama Zulu and Ogotomeli of the Dogon, were initiated by their own grandparents. So the order of a stranger coming to tell you about random ancestors, it breaks the initial order of protocol, and it doesn't consider the separation between the types of ancestors. So before you go to a medium, find out if this person has reached the tukula, the V of life, because a person who has not has what is called in Lugbara Ole. So that person might be miserable and seeking to make your life miserable as well. That's it from me, Musoni Ntukulu Wabangonini Bandau. Thank you for watching. Like the video, share the video. If you have not subscribed to this channel, press that subscriber button, press that notification button, so that you can always get the latest update of ancestral intelligence, AI, peace, and African power.